Like a buxom super frog, Elvira gracefully glides with up to jump out of the butt of the UK on Amigos Everything Amiga. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Amigos. I'm John.
And I'm Aaron. You broke me up with that one, Bo. You're so stupid.
Today, Aaron, we're talking about Elvira,
Oh,
the
yeah.
arcade game.
Beautiful, man.
Aaron, everybody knows about Elvira.
Do
It's sort
they?
of like, well, I mean, did the Oak Ridge Boys write that song about her?
No. No. God, no.
I thought that was like an early like cross-marketing thing.
No.
Does the Oak Ridge Boys song predate Elvira?
God, no. No, 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 no. In fact, it's funny you should mention that. I've got a few Elvira facts here if we're going to go down that road. So, Elvira has been around longer than you'd think. She basically came on the scene in like the early 80s.
Right.
Now, she's been around a lot longer than that. I mean, she's been a showgirl. Like, I believe, as I recall, she went out with Elvis, among other luminaries.
Really?
So
Wow.
yeah. She's been around for a long time. But she ended up taking over a horror show in, I believe it was Los Angeles, from a fellow. And the show was called Fright Night. And so she came up with the goth vampire gimmick.
So when she dated Elvis, she wasn't doing it in the Elvira character.
No, the Elvira girl hadn't came around yet.
Okay.
And the funny thing is, when she started doing Elvira, she was almost instantly sued by the chick that used to be a Vampira from the 50s.
I know her because I
You would
just
know
watched
her.
Plan 9.
Exactly. She was in Plan 9. And you can see a similarity there.
Yeah.
But if you go back and watch any footage of that chick, like, she's not what I would call a fountain of charisma. She's hot, don't get me wrong. And I guess back in those days it didn't matter. But she
Mhm.
had a more low-key approach. Like, Elvira is more like a goth valley girl or something. She acts silly and is funny. And she's also not just a hot chick. She's got charisma. She's got
Right.
screen presence. She knows how to conduct herself,
Right. It's that perfect combination of sexy, scary, and funny.
She's not, well, yeah, I mean, yeah. Yes, I'll agree with you. And if you ever watched her show, because I believe, I don't know if I saw her hosting the show, the Scary Show. And I believe she had a syndicated show after that. That was pretty much the same type of show where she would just host really bad horror movies and she would put in bits. It was sort of like Mystery Science Theater without the actual in-movie hilarity, just cut scenes and stuff.
Mhm.
And she was always funny. And she knew what people, I mean, if you're watching a scary movie show on like a Saturday night, like you're probably a dude at the house eating a pizza and like you're flipping around between Twilight Zone and Outer Limits. So what do you want to see? Because you want to see weird horror and a really hot chick. And it was like, bam, you're in. And if she happens to be hilarious, double trouble.
Right.
So,
right.
yeah.
Now, what is it about? I thought about a lot about this. I don't know if this happens as much anymore, but TV shows, when they used to show movies on TV, you'd have this host, that would come in when you come back out of commercial or whatever.
Yeah.
Why was that deemed necessary?
Well, I'm going to speculate here, okay? Because you're right. There were lots of things that had an in-between host. Now, not everything did. In the early days, this is going to sound stupid, but I'm going to just say it because it's true. There was a time where there were no movies on TV, okay? And so when movies started being, because the movie people didn't want their crap on TV, because if their movies are on TV, why would you go to the movies, right? And so at that point, the movie coming on the TV was a bigger deal. Okay, this was network TV. Now, when you trickle down to your cable affiliates, your public access, your local channels, the movies they're going to get are going to be second or third tier, right? Because to get the good movies, you're going to have to pay more. And so I think a lot of times, especially when it came to movies that were like really bad or really offbeat, it helps to have a hook to get people to watch them. Because you just watch Plan 9, for example. Your average viewer back in the day, before that movie had a cult following, would not want to watch it. It's because it's horrible.
Right.
But they might want to watch it if a guy dressed like a space commander or a sexy broad was like there in between the bits. You know, it's been everyone from the on USA. They had Rhonda Shear. They've had Gilbert Godfrey. They had all these different people that would host these movie shows because even if the movie sucked, you knew there's something wacky was going to happen on the commercial breaks, and so I think that's a big reason why that they stuck that stuff in there. It's augmenting what are often low end films.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Um, they make the movie better. I remember even, in when I was in college, they used to have a thing on TNT called Dinner in a Movie, where
Sure.
they'd show a movie and then they'd cook dinner, as the host segments, and I thought that was cool. It was
Yeah.
like you were watching a movie with a friend that was not actually your friend.
That's true, and also, if you think about it, like, okay, it's dinner and a movie tonight. Okay, we're gonna show Speed, okay, for example. And this really holds true in the more modern era where you could go rent a movie. Like, I could go rent Speed right now if I wanted to, or if it was the '80s. I could go to Blockbuster or whatever, but if they're gonna show a movie like that, why would you watch it? Well, it's cheap to put a little studio segment in between the actual movie, and maybe if that will get a few extra thousand people to watch the
Yeah.
movie because they like just like Rhonda Shear up all night. People thought Rhonda Shear was hot. She was. And they watched her. People thought Gilbert Godfrey's late night movies was funny, and it was, just like Captain USA's Groovy Movies on Saturday afternoon. Kids like that guy, and so they'd stick around and watch whatever idiot kid movie he had, or cartoon,
Mhm.
or whatever. It's the same thing. And so
Now,
Elvira fit in there nicely.
would you say that, Sven Gulli is the Elvira of the new millennium?
No. God, no. Spenguli, no. I mean, there are people that know who he is, but no, I mean,
You don't think that he walks with the same sort of cachet that Elvira did?
well, I don't think he's as good.
Mm.
I'm not the biggest fan, if I'm honest. I don't hate him. I just think his shtick is a little even hackneyed by my standards.
I've
But I
never
mean,
seen him, so, like, how is it besides the fact that he is not a scantily clad female, what is different about Sven Gulli's approach?
he just does little bits. He's got friends that come in. I mean, his approach, I don't think there is an approach. He'll just,
Mm.
some bad jokes or a wacky skit. I mean, it's hit or miss, but Elvira, her skits, by the way, weren't what I would call the tip-top show, but it was good because not only was she amusing and she was good at delivering material, but she could just sit there and you'd be like, oh, Jiminy Christmas. I remember the first time I was with the channels and I come across her show, I couldn't believe it because I mean that was pretty risque,
Sure.
even for late night TV. And so, did I sit through and did I watch the movie Gargoyle because I wanted to watch Gargoyle? No, I wanted to watch her, and Gargoyle just happened to be in between the parts where she showed up.
Yeah.
Different world back in those days. There was no internet where you could just look up hot chicks or do whatever. And so, anytime something like that happened, you'd be like, "Holy smokes, look at this chick!" That's what it
Right.
was. I don't hate Spenguli, but it's and it's funny. I know people that have actually been. My buddy at work worked with a guy who hosted a horror based, late night local show, and I've seen
Mhm.
video of him on it. So I mean, there were Spenguli like guys all over the country when that was more when local TV was produced like that. Not so much these days where they're doing that sort of thing, which is it's kind of sad. But you've got to have an audience to watch that sort of thing. When you can watch everything on Earth, why bother? I guess.
If you were gonna host a show like that, would you want it to be a horror show? What sort of, like, bad movie trope genre would you wanna host?
Well, I do, I'm a big Mystery Science Theater fan, and so I like what they've got because they can show any sort of movie, and as long as it fits the criteria of being not that good, so I
Right.
would
So, like,
probably
you
like
went to see Point Break recently, which is not
right,
a science fiction or horror film,
yeah,
but it was still worthwhile.
and it was outstanding. It's because, well, that's one thing, like, it's easy for me to say, yeah, I want to be like Mystery Science Theater. The problem is they're professional comedic writers and they're geniuses,
They're
and
very
I'm an
funny.
unfunny fat moron. So if
Yeah.
you sat and watch me laugh at a movie, you'd be like, I'm not sitting through Point Break with Aaron. This guy's an idiot. So, but yeah, I would. It would be fun to try to do that, wouldn't it? Just like one or two movies, see if you could pull it off.
We'll
But
add
they
that to
don't.
the
They don't.
list of career possibilities once the show ends.
I wish I was witty enough just to be that funny, like on the fly. Like that'd
Oh,
be like a
yeah.
superpower. But those guys have writers and they go over material over and over and refine it. So it's not
Yeah.
like they just are real funny. I mean, they
Yeah.
are, but they have to be funny in advance.
Yeah. Well, speaking of funny in advance, let's talk about Elvira, the arcade game.
Elvira. The repetitive glory of the Elvira theme boat. Just, it just, if you like 4 notes, you'll love it 600 times. That's the theory behind that one. Well, here we are, Boat. I don't have to ask you the usual question. I know you've played this one because we covered this in episode 15. What the date was 2015, I believe you said.
Yeah,
This
was part 2 of our first Halloween spooktacular.
Yeah, and we in that one episode we covered all the Elvira games, so we really covered this thoroughly. So this, they call this the flashback or whatever, but a lot of times these got a glance at best from us back in the day. So it's nice to go back and have a good hard look at them. Of course, we're talking about Elvira the arcade game. Released in 1991 on 4 different systems, Boat, according to the internet here. In 91, this got, of course, the Amiga release, a DOS release, an Atari ST release, and a Commodore 64 release. I'm guessing, just from looking at the box, that this came out in the PC first, and I'll tell you why I think that. One of the blurbs on the box is it says one of the first PC games in MCGA with 256 colors. So this is a 256
this is the first
game.
time I've ever heard about MCGA before. Tell me about that.
Well, listen, it was just a graphical standard that was floating around back in the day. You got CGA, right? That's for suckers.
Yeah.
And you've got VGA. I mean, we're getting there. But this is MCGA.
MCGA, it stands for multiple CGAs.
Yeah. The 256 colors are various shades of weird blue and pink. That's right. That's what it is. This was put out by the Flare people, Flare Software, spelled correctly, just like the Nate. We've looked at some of Flare's offerings. I'm not gonna sit here and say mixed bag. That Flare was responsible for 1869, Danger Streets. Oh man, Double Agent, Oscar, another one of our favorites. Rally Championships. Remember that? This is a diverse portfolio.
Yeah, they didn't just do one type of game. That's for sure.
Soccer Superstars, Summer Olympics with an X, so it's dirty. Surf Ninjas, and Trolls. These are the various offerings. I can't remember. Did you love Trolls or hate Trolls? I can't remember.
Trolls is one of the worst games that we've done on this show.
There you go. Wow, that's a burial. So this was, according to the box and several sources, this has a design credit designed by Michael Headley. That's Headley, Philip Nixon, Mark Sample, and Philip Scott. This was coded on the Amiga by Mick Headley, or Michael Headley, who was responsible for the international.
Better.
Mick's good. He was responsible for International Ninja Rabbits. I guess he's claiming that one. Oscar, Trolls. I'm sure he's happy to hear what you said about Trolls. Turn and Burn and Whiz, amongst others. The graphics on this were done by Phil Nixon, who was responsible for Demon Blue. I'd like to say that sounds pretty good. That's like
it's a Steely Dan song.
Is it Demon Blue?
They call me Demon Blue.
Oh, beautiful! You sound just like one of the guys in Steely Dan. I hate that band. He did the Elviras. Listen to this, Boat. This guy was responsible for first-person pinball.
Oh my gosh!
One of our all-time least favorite games.
Between Trolls and first-person pinball, what a lineage this game has.
He also did Morph, Oscar, and Roller Coaster Rumbler, that's quite a game right there.
I haven't played that one.
And the music on this also Phil Nixon, who did music apparently for Winter Super Sports '92 and Troll Turn and Burn. So got a lot of different folks on this bad boy. This was one of those gimmicks where they released it you could tell this has got multiple languages on it because nary a word is spoken in the majority of in terms of nothing's printed on the screen hardly. This is an ECS OCS joint 2-discer, 1 player only, and this game I've got the box here. I thought I'd go over some of the bullet points because one of these bullet points I found highly amusing. It claims to be the first arcade game to feature the ActiMap development system. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
Yeah, so maybe there's a reason this is the first. The Amiga version, unlike the MCGA version, 32 colors. But one of the things I like here, it says the Commodore 64 version uses the same maps and game plan as the Amiga.
Oh,
So they're
well, really
well,
taking advantage of that Amiga hardware then.
there you go. So when you watch this game open, before I get into the actual overview, I want to get your opinion on the opening of this game, which basically shows a mansion. It kind of zooms into the door, and you see Elvira like sleeping, and then there's a big lightning strike, and then Elvira like juts awake.
Right.
What did you think about this opening, and
Well,
what did you get out of it?
You have to read the documentation to really appreciate it, because this is one of the rare games that we've covered here recently where I think the people that wrote the documentation did play the game, or at least watch the intro. Because apparently Elvira is knocking a couple back, I guess, as she's wont to do, right? And she falls asleep, and I guess, and she's
Or
dreaming.
passes out.
Yeah, and then she wakes up. The docs talk about she's got a 3-poster bed.
Yeah.
Do you remember this part? Because the termites ate the 4th post.
Is that some sort of reference that I don't get, or is that just high weirdness?
Who can say? Who can say? But anyway, and so she's transported into this fantasy land. The intro in this game is very well done. I wouldn't say it's full motion video.
It's very smoke and mirrors.
It's like 8th motion video.
There's a bit of motion at one point.
There's a hint of motion, but all of the drawings, like Elvira, is rendered in incredible detail.
Yeah, but not sexily. It's just sort of her face. Yeah.
Right.
So, amongst the many things the docs mentioned, and you pretty much nailed it, Elvira is sitting around thinking how cool it'd be to go through time, basically. And in the beginning of this, the lightning strike is basically an old wizard, like, beaming into her house at her bed. And he's King Gustav of Transylvania. And he tells Elvira if she can get past these various trials, he will make her the heir to, and she can inherit his super castle. I will say the docs also work in buxom beauty and large assets amongst the many baloney statements that are that are in this. Now, with all that said, Boat, here's the $1 million question. Did these guys have any idea that this was going to be an Elvira game before they made it an Elvira game?
Well, that is the question. I was reading about a Nintendo game called Bugs Bunny's Crazy Castle.
Yeah.
Which, depending on where you were in the world, it was either released as a Bugs Bunny game, a Mickey Mouse game, or a clown game. And I feel like this is a game that is right along those lines. Because if you take Elvira's sprite out of this game, you could replace it with literally anything else you wanted.
Yeah. I personally think Elvira had zero to do with any part of this game until they got the license, and then they just animated a hot witch girl. And which, by the way, they're a palette swap away from calling this chick Esmeralda or the Sorceress or anything else. I mean, so I'll just get this out of the way. One of the things I like about Elvira in real life is, like, her wit. Aside from the fact that she's hot, with assets and all that other stuff, she's funny. She's good at playing the role. And she's got jargon, Elvira jargon, that's funny, right? None of the charm or wit or anything from Elvira is present in this game in any way. There's no dialogue of Elvira. There's no, she doesn't talk to anybody. Even I watched the ending. The ending is as generic as it could be. So if you're thinking to yourself, hey, this is going to be cool, I love Elvira, unless you're really in love with the Elvira sprite that flies around, like, you're not getting any Elvira in this at all. I mean, am I missing anything here, Bode?
No, and I wonder how many people, even this is a UK game. How often was Elvira shown on TV versus what was the UK's exposure to Elvira in all the many sort of product placement ads that she did, because she was all over, Doritos
Beer
and
commercials.
beer and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
so if you were in the UK and maybe they didn't play Elvira on the Beeb and all you knew about her was hot chick from the beer ad,
Yeah.
you didn't know about any of her charm or her wit, and you were buying a game because it had a sexy girl in it.
Well, it's funny. I seem to remember talking to some people. It's funny every time I wonder if the stuff's over in the UK or in other parts of the world. Elvira, I know people overseas know about Elvira because we've had chats about it. I don't know about Australia or any parts of Europe aside from the UK. How big was she? Don't know, but I mean, she was big enough to star in 2 pinball games, and those get shipped all over the world. And so, and like we mentioned, she did a lot of advertising, including big standees. I remember going to beer, I think she was a Coors spokesman, and there'd be hot Elvira life-size stand-ups all over the place. And Halloween, they trotted her out for years and years.
Oh, yeah.
I saw her on the Halloween cook-off a couple years ago. She showed up. She does it. She's like 70-some years old, but she's really, with the makeup and stuff and the hair, she doesn't look that much different.
You know that she's passed on, right?
No, what? She died?
Yeah.
I didn't know that, actually. No. That's horrible news, Bode. I didn't know that. I'm looking here. It doesn't say she's dead on Wiki.
Really? I thought she passed away.
No. My God.
Oh, well.
Thank God. So, but anyway, I don't know if you're right. Maybe no one cares about Elvira the character, but I was disappointed. I'm not going to lie, that they didn't bring anything of that aspect.
That is crazy. I could have sworn that I read that she died.
Oh, God.
I'm sorry.
I'm glad you're wrong.
Sorry.
That's
when
okay.
she listens to this, just know that I do apologize.
Man, you don't want Elvira. Well, maybe you do. Come to think of it, maybe you do want her coming after you. So with all that said, let's get into the game proper. You mentioned it in your opening. This game doesn't deviate far from the usual control aspects of the Amiga. You move the joystick to walk left and right, to jump up and down, or to jump, you have to hit up on the joystick or diagonal. And when you crouch, you pull down, you crouch. Nothing there that's out of order. You get music or sound effects. You don't get both. Did your version of this default to sound effects or to music, Bo? Do you recall?
It defaults to sound effects.
Yeah, mine too. I had to hit S to turn the music on. The music I thought was, it was okay. It was okay. It wasn't the best, but it was okay. You also have to use keyboard commands on this. You have to hit. You pick up spells that you have to select through and hit enter to pick the spell, and they're important. You can't not use them. So what did you think about how Elvira controlled in this thing, Boder?
She controls fine. The jump is floaty, but it's not. It's not insurmountably floaty, and I thought the controls were pretty consistent. I like the speed at which she fires her projectiles.
Yeah.
It's a very Gods-like projectile firing scheme where you can really pump out a lot of whatever you're throwing.
Yeah, when this game first starts, it feels a lot like Shadow of the Beast at the very first part of the game. I mean, just the first part. But once you start playing it, it's definitely got a decided God's feel to it. The way you can get more than one weapon, and then you get 2 or 3 of the same weapon, and you're throwing more. And the way you float around, and Elvira is in zero hurry. She doesn't run. She floats, like you said.
This is a difficult phrase to say. She sashays.
That's right.
She's got a very distinctive gait.
And when she jumps, I mean, how would you describe her?
She doesn't jump. She soars into the air. She raises her knees up
and
hands. Spreads her arms apart like wings.
That's exactly
right. But this is the best part of the game. The best part of the game is watching Elvira leap.
And if you jump her straight up, you do get like a view straight ahead of her. So they actually did put that in. They didn't just
they want to make sure that you're getting your money's worth from an eye candy perspective.
Did you think that was eye candy when you did that?
What else would you call it?
I don't know. So when you start this game, this game is it's kind of sort of European in a lot of ways. When you start the game, you get 2 choices. You can go to 2 different globes. All right. I don't know if they were trying to be cute there or not.
I mean,
Um,
to me, that was cool. You know, you can choose.
no, no, I'm
I
talking
like
about the fact
games
they
that
use
allow you to
globes,
choose your
but
world. The
yeah,
globes are that's a cool thing, and that scene is actually rendered very well too. You've got two snow globes that are separated by a stack of books.
yeah.
That might have been the height of the game for me right there.
I read that some of the books have some like UK insider jokes that I didn't get. So
Probably.
your mileage may vary. So there's that. You've basically got a nice world that you could explore, or you could choose to explore the like a fire world. Officially, they're called Underworld of Fire and Arctic Earth. So these worlds. So when you go into these worlds and you're expecting, okay, what am I in for? Well, what you're in for is one long level. Each one of these long that require you to go through several to acquire keys and certain objects to pass through certain areas, just to get even come close to getting to the end of these. And once you've started a world, you can't back out and try the other one. I mean, you're locked in until you either die or you finish that world. Um, just for my own edification, but which world did you go for first on your
I
first
went with the
play?
ice world first.
Well, that's funny. I went for the ice world as well. That's funny. So, talk a little bit, Boat, about the level design and the graphics here.
Well, this is classic Euro platforming action. I
Yep.
mean, whenever whatever kind of like BAFTAs there are for European game design, this game should be in the Hall of Fame and Mount Rushmore because it exemplifies everything that is Euro platforming. Just incredibly, incredibly long levels
Yeah.
that are just super confusing without even trying. Um, there is no rhyme or reason to what direction you should travel in. In this game, you're not collecting a certain amount of things to move on. You're just sort of blundering around until you should happen upon the end.
Yeah.
Um, there are multiple doors that you go into where you go into different zones within the level. So even if you've got like some graph paper handy, you're going to be mapping out multiple different zones within the level. This is also a game where you have signposts, but the signposts frequently point in the wrong direction. At least in my perspective, they or my when I was playing, they did.
You went through them
Um,
backwards. That's why.
yeah,
I did
yeah,
too. Yeah.
and so this game it's a lot of the same thing for a very long time. Um, it's probably the most boring game that I can remember playing on Amigos. And
Wow.
that's the ultimate sin, really, because all you're doing the same thing over and over and over again. You're just jumping from platform to platform, falling from ledge to ledge. The enemies never pose a huge threat to you. In this game, just running into enemies destroys them. This is another one of those games where the enemies don't necessarily pursue you. They kind of go on about their business, and if they should happen to run into you, then they just die immediately. Um, this is a game where there are special abilities. You can power up your main weapon. You can get scrolls. The scrolls are all iconographical, so you have to consult the manual. And there's a lot of spells in the game's
Yeah.
defense. There's a lot of spells. However, the spells are not real cool. They're all one-time use type things, and I never really found them to be that useful or that powerful. You know, whenever I get a power up, I like to be feel more powerful than I am normally. And with the spells that I got, I never really got that feeling. Um, if you just enjoy being lost in corridors and navigating a labyrinthine world where the background never really changes for 45 minutes to an hour at a time of perfect play, then Elvira might be the game for you. It's a shame because how many times we said this, all the other elements are there. The monsters in this game, that they look good. I mean, they're well drawn. The animation could be better, but there's a variety of monsters. Elvira the sprite looks good. And the background art itself also looks good. This is another game that just suffers from bad level design.
I think I liked it a little more than you did. I mean, I'm not going to dispute practically anything you said there. I mean, you're not wrong. And the amount of one thing I had to learn to deal with is like you're going to be lost and confused the entire time you play, and wondering what you're doing. I did manage to stumble forward most of the time, but when I stumbled forward, I wasn't sure what
Well,
I'd
when you say
missed.
stumbled forward, how did you even know that you were making progress towards the end?
Oh, but it's just because I would get to places I hadn't seen and there'd be stuff there. That's how I knew. But I mean, I don't know if I was coming toward the end or not. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I managed to keep most of the time. I managed to find
Because
places to
that
go
yeah, I
that I
mean,
haven't been.
that's what I want. What I want in a game is you can make the levels crazy. Okay, for example, let's compare this to Castlevania Symphony of the Night, which I've been playing a lot recently,
Uh
okay?
huh.
Castlevania Symphony of the Night is essentially the same as Elvira. You have one huge level. You've got Dracula's castle, okay? And you are exploring Dracula's castle for hours and hours and hours on end, okay?
Yeah.
What you do have in Symphony of the Night is a map,
Yeah.
okay? And so you can see where you've gone and where you need to go. And that makes all the difference in the world.
Oh
You
yeah.
also are constantly upgrading your character. So you start out, this is where the Metroidvania genre comes from. You see areas in the level that you can't get to, and you make a mental note. So when you get the double jump or when you get the extra long whip, you can get up there and you can do something new. In this game, your abilities never change. Your power-ups change minimally. You have no character growth. You're essentially just repeating the same action over and over and over again until you stumble upon the end of the level.
Are you ragging on the active map development system, boat? The
Listen,
act.
I think that I don't even believe that whatever that is a thing. I
That's
think
what the
that was
box
something that the
says.
document writers made up to try and market the game.
It might be. Now, look, I listen. Everything you're saying about the maps, I 100% agree with. And this game has many, many flaws. But that's the number one. Again, it's another game. Just give us some level endings. Just write them in, or someplace a checkpoint,
Yeah,
something,
checkpoints, right.
anything that, or something that says okay, or just a percentage on the screen.
Yeah.
Even that would be better than
Listen,
nothing.
you're asking for the world with Euro
Well,
platformers when you
I'm
ask
just
for something
saying
like that.
it's. But again, we've talked this before. This goes back to your picking up a cassette at the pharmacy for your ZX Spectrum back in the day. They still hadn't got out of that sort of like you get your
Yeah,
money's worth
I
for
mean,
the
this is
exploration.
essentially this game is essentially Underworld with a sexy lady.
So I will say, so here are some things I liked about the game. Then I'll get back to some stuff I didn't like. I love gods, and so the pace of this game was I could be halfway decent at it, which is nice. You get a ton of lives, you get to continue, and you get a pretty good health bar that you can augment occasionally, which I like that. So you do it doesn't force you to explore, but not give you the means to at least give it a shot. I'll give the game that. I thought Elvira controlled pretty well. Uh, I thought the game the sound effects are okay. They're nothing to write home about, but they weren't. They didn't make me want to kill myself. The music again, I didn't play that much. As I like it, but it's okay. I mean, it wasn't my bag. The enemies, like you said, are cool. You'll come across mini bosses sometimes, which are fun. You'll also come across even the rigmarole schlups are like occasionally cool looking.
Yeah,
Sometimes they'll be
all of the
chained up
enemies in this game
wolves
are
or
very well done.
yeah, sometimes there'll be stuff will pop out of the ground, stuff like that. Elvira looks awesome. They did a great job with her. This game has those cool backgrounds where like sort of like the Addams Family on the ST, where it's like it's nice. There's depth to it, which is
Mhm.
cool. On the top, when you're on the main world, the top world, you get a little more like planier action. It looks pretty good. It's not Shadow of the Beast, but it's pretty good. That part reminded me a lot of Shadow of the Beast, the way stuff attacks you, but you're not up there that much. You were talking about the spells. The spells are a mixed bag because there are some spells you absolutely have to progress.
Okay.
For example, there's a spell that gives you immunity from fire because you have to jump into this fire pit to get past that part of the level. There's no way around it.
Oh,
There's
so
a
if you don't find the spell that you need, then you're boned.
Well, the spell is luckily you pick it up nearby. Now, here's what
Okay.
you can also do, Bode. You can get the spell and then not know what it is, use it, and then be screwed, and then you're
Because
screwed.
it's a one-time use thing.
Yeah.
And
So
it's not as if Elvira, what would have been nice is if even when you cast the spell, if Elvira in her Elvira voice would have just been like, fireball or whatever, at least you'd know what was going on.
or like, here's what I would have done. Like sort of like an EverQuest thing. Once she finds a certain spell, she memorizes it, so you don't have to
Yeah,
go back and
yeah,
look for it again.
right.
There's a spell that basically is like a first aid spell that'll come in handy. There's another one. There's an area where you can only get to it by plummeting, because Elvira eventually she'll die if she falls a pretty good distance, and so there's a feather fall where that way you can get that spell. I never managed to get the spell and get to the point where I needed it, but I know it's there. There's also a thing, and this baffled me at first. There are these areas you can get to that have these weird like globe sculptures. I was like, what is this thing? Well, that's where there's a teleport spell, and when you go there and use it, that's how you get from that area to the next area with a teleporter. And then there's also a fireball and ice ball spell that the fireball spell hangs around for a while. The lightning spell is like a one use. I'm sure some of this stuff I don't know what it does, but that's what they're there for. And then occasionally, and I don't know where you may have ran into him in different spots. I know he's always in the same spot, but he's in different levels. You find him is the wizard merchant guy that you could get to.
Yeah, and so this is an interesting mechanic, the wizard merchant guy. Because at the end of the game, I think the wizard turns into the king. Is that what you got out of the ending?
Well, I was baffled by the ending until I read the docs. So because the ending, basically Elvira confronts this old wizard guy, and then he basically, I don't know, puts on a small show and then gives her the kingdom. And I was like, what is this? And he does look like that guy. So
that's what I wondered. Like, was the wizard guy the king all along? And
wizard guys they're eerily similar looking. So there might be something to that.
And but anyway, you get there, and this is totally unlike any other in-game store I've ever seen.
Yeah.
You can either trade spells, or you can exchange runes for information.
Yeah.
And there are 2 rune options. You can give a little bit of runes or a lot of runes. And the amount of runes that you get correspond to the quality of the advice that you receive from the wizard. After you pay 5 runes and you get the first bit of useless information, and you realize that this was a waste of time. It's such a slap in the face to the gamer to give them just a choice that's totally useless. I don't understand why the wizard is there, other than the fact that, like you said, you do need certain spells to progress through the game, and if you happen to have the wrong one, talking to the wizard at the right time can give you the spell that you need.
Yeah.
But other than that, this is a real missed opportunity that they could have really done some things to make Elvira the game cooler. She could have bought, I mean, if you're walking around these levels and you're collecting currency to buy things at a store, then that gives you a reason to explore the level, you know?
Yeah.
And like I said, I just don't understand why they didn't go that route.
It made me instantly not care about collecting runes anymore. I collected the heck out of them until I realized what I got for now. I will say, the information you get is like fortune cookie-esque in its usefulness, but the reason I figured out that I needed to jump into that fire pool with that spell was because the guy said, out of the frying pan is his clue. And I was like, well, maybe that means I have to jump into fire. So even my dumb guy brain figured one of them out. That was my proud moment in this game. I played the ice world less than I played the fire world, or no, I take that back. I played the ice world less, but I found the no, I take that back. It was the fireworks. I had the demons. I played the fire world less, but I found it to be an easier world to get around than the ice world, in my opinion, having played them both. Much like you were talking about Castlevania, you'll also come across places in this that you'll wonder how to get to. The problem is, unlike, say, Castlevania, like, the chances if you figure out how to get there are very low. I mean, you might get lucky, but and the thing is, the payout might be a spell that you need, and it might not, you know. But I'm not sure how they divvy those out. But there were aspects of the game I liked and aspects I didn't like. Now, here's some stuff I hated. This game is cheap. Cheap. The thing, fire will come out of the ground as you walk on it. The stuff will attack you that you can't see it through the walls. Sometimes you'll walk behind stuff and it will block your view, and stuff will attack you. It'll just pop up there. The bad guys are super duper cheap. There are some places normally they do a certain amount of damage, but like there are some items in the game that will like lava rocks that like pretty much kill you almost instantly, which is cheap after you haven't been killed instantly by everything else, including dragons and other types of fire. I just thought that the bad guys sometimes will gather in a weird way. I'm not sure if it's a bug or whatever, but like suddenly there'll be like 15 guys coming at you. You're like, what happened? Normally they're a lot more leisurely about their attack.
I think that there might be some weird coding going on with how the enemies spawn. Because
Yeah.
I noticed that too. Most of the time, the enemies don't pose much of a threat. But then sometimes it's like the swarm of locusts. You know,
Yeah.
they just all come at you at once.
There are hidden areas in this game, and that you will be. By the way, Bo, that's what I'm talking about right there. If you're watching the video, there are parts of this game that have like secret areas, and I found like maybe 2, not counting that, and the only way I found them was because I just staggered it. I mean, I had zero idea they were there. They're like the chances of finding them things are practically nothing. There are parts of the game where I had no idea what the stuff did, and when I consulted the rule book, it doesn't help at all. It doesn't identify any of the actual obstacles in the game, or even tell you what you're supposed to do in any given situation. So the manual, with the exception of telling you what the spells and stuff are, is effectively worthwhless. So I didn't like that.
It's not worthless. It gives you the backstory.
Well, the backstory. Here's another pet peeve of mine. Sometimes, like, when you get 3 of any one weapon, you're much more powerful, and you've got a much better firing arc. So you really want to keep 3 torches, 3 daggers, 3 of the throwing stars. When you have 3 of something, you'll occasionally come across a place that you have to go, and that you have to take the weapon that's there because the hall is blocked, and so you automatically go down to like 1, and so and it happened all the time, and it used to piss me off because you work hard to get the triple weapon, and then you're back down to the single weapon, and there's stuff in this game that you have to stare at a pepper for like a minute to kill. It takes forever to kill some of this stuff. So this is stuff that's like basic gaming 101. And here's one of my main pet peeves. Like, basically, jumps of faith, leaps of faith. There's tons of them in this game. There's no way to look down. The screen doesn't scroll down. And so I can't tell you how many times you're just hoping you don't die. And it sucks. Am I going to jump into lava? Am I going to jump into a pit? Am I going to jump into a monster? You have no idea. And now, I hate games like that. There's no if you're going to have a game that does that stuff, make it so you can scroll down a little bit. I mean, I'm sure they had that technology in 91 boat that would let you hold the button down or hold crouch down and look down.
Of course they did. I mean, Sonic had been doing that for years.
And if you don't have that technology in your game, don't make so many flipping leaps of faith. I hated that. Those are my main pet peeves. I sat down with this last Sunday, and I played a couple hours, and I got frustrated and quit. And I remember when I played this the first time we did it, I didn't like it that much. I sat down and played it last night for probably about 3 hours. I played. I don't know how close I got to either of the exits. I never got off any level, I might add. And I should mention there's a 3rd level if you get off these. But I felt like I was making some progress. I think if I had a map in front of me, I could probably get to the end of these levels. But there is no map that I can find, and there's no invulnerability hack that I could find. And so eventually I just died, and then that was the end of it. So I guess I like the actual gameplay proper, but everything around the gameplay I'm not too fond of, Boater.
Yeah, I mean, this is a game that you just wonder why. Why bother playing it? Because you start the game in the same position that you finish. I mean, at the heart of it, this is a 2D maze game. And if you enjoy sort of finding your way to the end of 3 long, complicated mazes, then you'll enjoy this game. But if you want any sort of story, character progression, feeling of empowerment, you're gonna really be disappointed.
Yeah, and no advancement, none of that stuff. So I mean, it's a mixed bag, leaning towards not the best. But I mean, I will say, Boat, I liked it more than I thought I would. I'm not 100%. I guess just because I like that sort of slow, floaty gameplay. I had a look to see what the the contemporaries, our friends over at Lemon and the Hall of Light said about this boat. And I was actually surprised. There's a pretty big difference in the scores here. The people at Lemon Boat give this a 5.52. That's
It's
pretty
pretty
low
low.
rating. The lower score over at Hall of Light, 79%, so a little bit better. The magazines back in the day were a little more forgiving than most people would be today, I'd wager. Amiga Action gave this an 87. Amiga Computing gave this a 70. The grumpy, miserable scumbag reviewers over at Amiga Joker managed to give this thing an 81%, which for them, that's like a 200.
Yeah, that's weird.
Amiga Power, a 70. CU Amiga, an 82. The average magazine rating is 78. I think that's a pretty respectable score,
Yeah,
Boater.
yeah.
How did we get any action on the with our buddies in Discord?
We did. Pajako6502 writes, I'll admit now I only had about an hour with this and didn't even make it out of the fire world. The worlds
Yeah.
are gigantic and sprawling, and it's very easy to get lost. I came across arrows pointing in opposite directions, which might have meant I could go any way, but it just came off as a what the hell am I doing? Where am I going? And ultimately, while this game isn't dreadful, by the time I put it down, I was bored and everything was very samey, and I have no desire to pick it up again. This feels like a generic stroll and gun platformer with Elvira, albeit beautifully animated, shoehorned in. Worth a quick play to see, but not much else. 6 out of 10. And Fraglord writes in, always nice to hear from Fraglord. He says, I played the Elvira games back in the day. The adventure games were great, and even if I never finished any of them, the experience is forever with me. The arcade game was a more traditional Amiga fare, serviceable in the feeling of a half-hearthed God's reskin. Half-hearted, I think maybe is what he said. Been playing Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Oh, man, what a coincidence.
Wow,
This
that's
last
crazy.
week. Yeah, and it's worlds apart. Still, for an Amiga platformer, it's a decent romp, and even if there could be a better contrast between foreground and background, it still looks okay. Nothing to write home about. See the movie or play the adventure games instead.
There you go. Very good. Bo, where would this? If you're a teacher, it's report card time. What are you giving the old Elvira here?
Oh, I mean, in the world of the Amiga platformer, this is a solid B.
Yeah.
Because there's a great variety of enemies and it controls well.
And
Okay.
it is attractive.
Yeah, and it's very attractive. So I
yeah.
would give this a solid B for an Amiga platform.
I'd say B minus, high C. One last bit of info. I did look this up on eBay. There were none available, Boat, right now for the Amiga. I did see some for other systems. In fact, I'm actively, aggressively attacking one.
Something tells me that there's a lot of Elvira collectors out there that will probably drive the price of these games up pretty high.
And I'll tell you, you're right, and it's a real thing. I've got a role playing game called Chill, and they released an Elvira source book that she hosts allegedly. She's on the cover, and it goes for huge money. And it's just a picture of her on the front and the back. Anyway, I did find some of these auctions that had ended. Someone sold a boxed Elvira for the Amiga for around $80, and one sold for over $120. And apparently, when this thing shipped, it came with an Elvira poster. So not too shabby. Hey,
That's
you
right.
gotta sell them. That's how you move a sucker right there. So Elvira, and play it on Halloween, and then just go watch some of her fine films.
Are you a sketchy tech? Do you have the right tools for the job? Have there been incidents? Next time, don't try to fix it yourself. Send your broken Amiga to Retro Rewind. Get a full diagnostic, a reasonable estimate, and the peace of mind knowing that your machine is in the hands of real technicians with decades of experience and cutting-edge repair equipment. Save 10% off your repair with the promo code AMIGOS10. Thank you to RetroRewind.ca for supporting this episode.
Amiga News.
Oh yeah.
All right, Aaron. A couple news stories this week. First one coming up on the indie retro news, which is as always our main source of news. Dungeonette, the new adventure. I like the name Dungeonette. That's very clever.
It's like a dungeon you can eat at.
Right, right. This is it's little cute dungeon game. It says this is a looks like a what you call this? Sort of a roguelike, looks like dungeon crawler. Although I don't know if it is a roguelike or not, but it's got that sort of top-down isometric view that I associate with games like this. You've got looks like upgradable weapons and armor. And this runs on a stock Amiga AGA CD32 with 2 mega chip RAM. And looks like this is still in development. This is the type of game, hot on the heels of the what was the game that came out for Rogue Declan and the Badger Punch game that just came out a couple weeks ago, whatever that Rogue game was. These games are getting hot, Aaron.
Yeah.
And so I'm not surprised to see another example of one of these out here. This one, unlike those games, does have the traditional Zelda-like combat where you're actually swinging a weapon, not just bumping into stuff. But again, yeah, we'll keep an eye on Dungeonette: The New Adventure. This is the creator Adrian Cummings, creators of original titles such as Cyberpunks, Tin Toy, Doodlebug, and many more. So
This looks real good, Bode. I mean, just he's well into it. Clearly, I did get a kick out of the character's name was Amiga Bilbo. Which that's cool. Look at that map, overlaid maps. Where
Yeah,
were you in
yeah.
Elvira map? You
Yeah.
hosed me again. But the lighting in this looks nice. I mean, this requires a more beefy Amiga, but this is a nice. Of course, these days it doesn't matter that much, but it looks good. This is one to keep an eye on, I think, Boder.
Absolutely, absolutely. Next, we've got this is, I'll tell you what's hot, Aaron.
Yeah,
What's hot is taking PC games that are lost and bringing them back to the Amiga.
Gotta
Not
bring
really
'em
back
back.
because they were never there, but this is the Lost Pixel, Aaron. This is a game that was a PC platformer from 2022, and thanks to the Amiga Factory, Aaron, it has appeared on the Amiga. This looks a lot like uh oh my gosh, Beanbag. Remember that game, Mr. Beanbag,
sure,
Aaron?
absolutely, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
This is a game that looks right up my alley. I love these little cutesy platformers. And it says the creator says Pix is a happy pixel part of a trending Amiga video game. And so you actually play as a pixel of an Amiga game. Pretty novel concept here.
Yeah.
The enemies in this game are very inspired by Bubble Bobble. In fact, when I say inspired, I mean sort of direct copies of. But this is a fully fledged platforming game for the Amiga. This is done on the Red Pill engine, which I
Yeah.
mean is sort of crap compared to Scorpion
Hey,
engine.
it looks
but,
good to me, pal. Look at that.
And you can choose two characters, the Pix Cube or the Pix Slime. And there's some original music. The game is released. You can pick it up right now at Amiga Factory, amiga-factory.itch.io. This is an aim your own price game. Pick it up
Hold on.
now.
This game is. We're looking at the playthrough someone did, and it's 15 minutes almost. I mean, there's a lot of levels and gameplay here,
Oh,
and it looks
yeah.
like some pretty good platform action and some diverse looking levels. This looks like a winner to me.
I would
Bode.
love to take a look at this at the show. This is a game that is right up my alley.
It's hard to believe. I'll tell you something. The fella that put this together, I'm gonna give this guy. By the way, it's a PC version too. I'm gonna give this guy credit because here's a game you name your own price. So a lot of people are going to go grab it. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, and this
Yeah,
is a
the
game,
days of the tiny little slug, 30 pounds for the digital edition, those days are over. People are
Well-
wising up that if you want to get your game out there, set it up for name your own price. People will buy it or people will get it for free. If they like it, they're going to throw you a couple bucks at least.
And the thing is, this is a lot of game that you could effectively give away. And so I think what you're looking at here, I mean, you're right. I think people are generally nice, and when they play something that is quality, they throw the author some cash. And I think this game's gonna do very well. So it looks like a real winner. But we got a lot of good games ahead of us. These new games are just coming on strong. They look great.
Yeah. Now, this next story, Aaron, is definitely going to excite you because I know what a fan of the Bitmap Brothers you are.
You got that right.
Xenon 2 Mega Blast
Yeah.
is, of course, the big Bitmap Brothers shooter. And there is a new version that's being coded by McGeezer.
Yeah.
And he's going to try and pump it up a little bit for AGA Amigas running at 50 frames per second. So if you're looking for the ultimate high-res, smooth as silk Xenon 2 bomb the base experience, then feel free to keep up with the development here. He says it's funny. He says 90% of the code is taken from Devil's Temple.
Yeah, I saw that. It's crazy.
Yeah, because of the sprite engine. So it's interesting that the way that you can kind of go back and forth with that stuff. The Geezer, of course, one of the best coders in the business, and this one is still under development, but we will keep you up to date when it finally gets released.
You know what I'd like? First of all, Devil's Temple, we loved. We reviewed that. We both thought it was really good. So it was a good piece of work, a well done piece of work. Now, I do like Xenon too, but it's people don't like it sometimes because it's kind of logy, a little slow. And I think at the time I always assumed that was because it was pushing a lot of graphics. And I'm thinking to myself, if McGeezer gets in here and has a streamlined system, he might better really give this a little bit of a jolt. You know what I mean? And make it run at a more acceptable level for folks that are into their shooters. So that might be a good thing. So we'll have to keep an eye on that one, Boater.
Yeah. Speaking of keeping an eye on things, Aaron, there's a new Mr. Clone out there, Aaron. This is a $30 FPGA. Now I call this a Mr. Clone.
Yeah,
that's actually a misnomer. This is an FPGA with an Amiga core. So don't expect Mr. Performance out of this thing. But if you're only interested in or hardware-based emulation on the Amiga, and you're not interested in any other cores or anything, $30, man. $30 gets you out the door. We've come a long way since the days of the Amiga, that's for sure.
It's funny. This is funny to me. And you had to, of course, drive the dagger and twist it a little, because I did buy an Amiga while you were over in Ireland because I was sad, and I did use that for quite a while. But this, we don't know about. I'm looking at this unless you know about it. I don't know what the ports are like. If it's got HDMI or anything, I would assume if it's running because one of the problems with the Amiga is you had to have the Amiga monitor. I hated that. I wanted HDMI. But if you think about it, if this runs the same core that the Mister does, and we can assume it does, a 68 ECO20, for $30, you could effectively take this thing and pop it in any dead Amiga that you've got sitting around, and probably have something similar to what an actual Amiga experience would be. An FPGA does a real good job of simulating Amiga. So if you think of it in those terms, I think that's a real good deal. If you just want something to stick on your desk and play Amiga, I think it's a real good deal. $30, that's dinner money. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I saw a lot of people bought those Amiga. In fact, you were at the show where they were selling all those little Amiga, those boxed Amiga things from the guys over at the
the AG 600.
Yeah, and if you think about it, those things were I think $140 or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And you're going to get. I know that no one's going to want to hear this, but I mean, you're going to get an Amiga experience on this at a fraction of the price. So there you go. You can do the math on that. Now that one came with certain amounts of software and whatnot, but I mean, it's 2024. I think you can find what you're looking for in terms of software. So that might be something. I haven't heard about this, but I'll definitely look into it.
All right, Aaron, and that's going to do it for this week's news because I really have to pee. So let's talk about what's coming up next week on Amigos.
Well, one quick thing before we go. Tomorrow night, as the crow flies, International Computer Club, 4 o'clock Eastern Time. We'll be having several hours of International Computer Club. We'll be on YouTube. We'll be on Twitch. It'll be everywhere, Boat. So that's Saturday, the 28th of September at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
And if you're listening to this show sometime next week and you missed it, don't worry because the whole thing will be recorded and reposted. Catch it on the flip side on Twitch or on YouTube.
Well said. Even while having to pee, you deliver a fine line, Boat. Let's see what we're getting into next week, Boater. Oh, that is unbelievable serendipity, universal karma at play. The game that has been chosen, Plan 9 from Outer Space, Ed Wood's classic.
That's right. That's right. So we go from Elvira to a movie Elvira might have hosted at some point.
I hope we get games like this all October long. It's going to be a lot of fun. Hey, I think that takes care of us, Bo. Any final thoughts?
No, hey guys, thanks for listening. As always, if you want to support the show, patreon.com/Amigos Podcast. We will see you next week. And until then,
Adios.
adios.
Amigos is made possible by contributions from listeners like you. Patreon supporters help choose the games we play, receive exclusive magnets, and get access to the Amigos Retro Gaming Discord server. Visit patreon.com/Amigos Podcast if you'd like to support the show and join our community.